Everything's stacked against ground nesting birds really, so disturbance is a huge, huge problem for them. The reason that they're in decline is an increase in predators. So at this site specifically, in the 90s, we had a huge increase in foxes and badgers. Things like the little tern, for example, they unfortunately can't tell the difference between a real threat, say a bird of prey like a sparrowhawk, and someone's pet dog that actually might just be curious. I have an amazing granddad who really loves British wildlife, and I've sort of followed in his footsteps really. My name is Becca and I'm the assistant warden working here at South Walney Nature Reserve. South Walney is an amazing place. It's the largest of the islands of Furness, and we are at the western end of Morecambe Bay in the Irish Sea. We have such a big combination of different habitats here. We have the sand dunes, the salt marsh, the shingle, and areas of vegetated shingle are actually quite rare in the UK. So that brings in a lot of wildlife that you might not see in other places. Because of that combination of things, we get a lot of different birds, a lot of different mammals and insects. Nesting season is a big thing to prepare for. It's a really big part of our year here. It starts sort of March, April time, and it can go right the way through until August. People should start really being mindful anytime from February, March onwards, because that's when the birds start to pair up. And you'll see them, when you pay attention, when you're walking on the beaches, you will see that the birds are, instead of in big flocks, they're often in pairs, especially the gulls, because they're quite early. And that's when you've noticed really that the season has begun and it's time to be a bit more mindful of your surroundings. The wildlife that we have here, especially the beach nesting birds, are under threat as their numbers are in decline. So certain species like our great blackback gulls and herring gulls that you might think are actually doing really well because you see them in the town centre, they're actually in decline. They're not doing as well as you'd think. At South Walney, there's a fair few species that are impacted by disturbance. Things like oyster catchers, ring plovers, little terns that we have nesting here. They unfortunately are often disturbed on their roost by people getting too close. A lot of the time it's just people wanting to have a look and it's innocent, but the bird can't tell that, you know. Things like the little tern as well. For example, they travel thousands and thousands of miles to come here. They come back every single year to the same place to nest. And what they won't realise is that their route has become someone's favourite walking route, for example, and people don't notice them. Quite often it's not deliberate disturbance, it's if they have started walking through that area, they may not notice the nest. Our ground nesting birds, they have really well camouflaged eggs, which has evolved that way on purpose so that they can blend in, but the problem is that means that people don't see them. People need to be able to observe from a distance before walking through areas, especially during the nesting season. There's a lot that goes into the preparation for the season. This area is really popular amongst the gulls, the small waders, and things like the oyster catchers, the dunnel and the turnstones, and the black-headed gulls, which is the species that we're trying to attract to these pens in this area. Because of the proximity to the coast, so just over behind you there is the beach that way, and they'll feed amongst the strand lines. They'll pick out little bits in there. Gulls will pretty much eat whatever they can. Same goes for the small gulls as it would the herring gulls that you'd find in the town centre. So they will pick amongst the strand line and look for food. They'll also skim off the top of the water and take insects in flight. Another hugely important thing about this area is that it's no public access. Because of that, even though some people do walk here sometimes, for the most part you don't get people down here other than me, so it's a very well protected and quiet area, so they feel very settled and safe in this area. These decoys that we're using today, they were actually painted by participants from the Bay, a Blueprint for Recovery, which is a nature and wellbeing programme in Barrow. And we work with them, and it's really exciting that they have gotten involved with this. This programme aims to connect people to nature, which is a really amazing thing to do. So what we do, we use these decoys, which are hollowed out, we fill them with sand, and we put them in pairs and separately, and that allows other birds to see them. When they fly over, they look for the colour, and they'll know that that's one of them, or at least they think it's one of them, so they'll land amongst them. It might look unsightly, but black-headed gulls actually really like to nest within tyres. Black-headed gulls are a colony bird. They like to nest within a nice big group. So the other thing that I'll be doing is creating a sound lure that'll play dawn till dusk every day with their call on it to attract them to it. It's not just birds here, we also have a lot of different mammals here. We get things like badgers, we have otters and foxes. We also have the amazing grey seal colony, which in the 80s started with one individual. We've now got 500, so that's impressive. The grey seals here are funny because they're used to not seeing people because they actually rest on the other side of this fence. That's their haul out, as it's called. So they're not used to people approaching them, but they're very, very curious. So if they hear people, they're instantly up. You know, they want to know what's going on. So when I take school groups around, it's quite funny because there'll be kids shrieking and laughing, and you'll just see these heads popping up from a safe distance and having a look and then straight back in. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a seal in there somewhere. I haven't seen him yet. There's a lot of disturbance to the seals. Mostly it's recreational disturbance, so it is people walking on our beaches, potentially kayaking or paddleboarding. Unfortunately, people try to get too close to them, and because our seals are in an area of the reserve where there's no public access, it's a lot more stressful for them to come across people. So disturbing them is a huge problem because when they come up to land to rest, they need to digest their food, they need to rest, regain their energy. It's about energy expenditure from having to flee into the sea. You can see at the moment that they are happily laying out in this area. We call this a seal haul out. So they always rest on this area or slightly further round. They do this to digest their food. So they spend 2/3 of their life at sea and 1/3 of their life out on the shingle, and in this time they are digesting food, resting, or when they are breeding, they'll be up on the land with their pups. What you're about to see is a boat going past the seals, and this is a boat that regularly goes past, so several times a day. And because it goes past at the same speed all the time and from a distance, it never really disturbs them. You'll see it as it comes past the end of the point there. None of them will really react to it because of how regular it is and because of the distance that it stays away from them. The problem that we have is when we have people who are kayaking, paddleboarding, in particular jet skis or other sort of ribs, small boats. The seals are actually very disturbed by this because it's not a regular thing, as people aren't supposed to come in close to them.
and they react in a really negative way to this, especially when people are actively trying to get closer to them. It causes them to panic. They all surge into the water, and especially during pupping season, which is later in the year. So pupping season for our seals is about October, November time. When they've got pups, this is a huge problem because they can trample on the pups to get away, and the pups can also end up in the water as well.
We always need to be mindful when we're watching wildlife, whether it is grey seals, whether it's birds, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we're watching respectfully. So the use of hides and screens is a good way of watching things without causing disturbance. It's often good to have binoculars, cameras, scopes, things to observe from so that you are at that distance. It's about observing respectfully from a distance and just being quiet. It's completely okay to be curious and to be excited to see these amazing animals because they are incredible.